Welcome, as Full Circle Ancestry presents the Slovakia and More tour. Last year I took you on the Slovakia Ancestry adventure, where I focused on the Slovak villages of my ancestral relatives. This time we'll take a broader look across the whole country of Slovakia, from west to east. We'll talk about some culture, some architecture and art, and some history too. To kick it off, I'll introduce three modern national capitals: Bratislava, the capital of Slovakia, and the capital cities of two of its neighboring countries, Prague in Czechia and Vienna in Austria. Talking about these neighboring capitals is a big part of why this series is called the Slovakia and More tour, although there will be a couple of other connections to Slovakia's neighbors in this series. I won't offer a comprehensive overview of these cities by any means, but this episode will demonstrate what one can reasonably see during a couple days in each city. These cities all have in common that they were part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire prior to that entity's termination after World War I. All the red, blue, and yellow parts were nominal constituents of that empire at its downfall. The black lines show the modern borders. In the red region were territories most closely aligned to Austria per se. The blue region denotes the old Kingdom of Hungary, and, well, let's leave the yellow part aside for now. Modern-day Austria derives mostly from red territory, as it were, although it obtained a little of the edge of blue Hungary. Today's Czechia, at the time the lands of Bohemia and Moravia, were also aligned to the Austrian half of the empire. The lands of modern-day Slovakia were part of the Kingdom of Hungary, tracing back more than 900 years. Vienna, Austria, or Wien, Österreich, as it is known in German, the primary language of Austria. At the risk of running off at the mouth, let's get started in the City of Music. Vienna traces its origins back to the Roman Empire. Through the centuries, various tribal groups and families ruled the city, but it was the Habsburgs, who began their rise to power in the late 1200s, who ultimately established Vienna as a preeminent imperial capital. It's full of nostalgia, such as this line of horse-drawn carriages. Today they just haul tourists. Every time you turn somewhere in Vienna, you see something magnificent. Alongside the pedestrian square known as Graben is the Church of St. Peter, with its customary statuary and ornate interior. Or this palace, which holds the famous Spanish riding school and the museum dedicated to Empress Elizabeth, known as Sisi. Stunning enough, as we turn, St. Michael's Church is revealed, with its customary statuary and ornate interior. Perhaps most magnificent of all Vienna's architecture is Hofburg Palace, formerly the emperor's primary residence, intended to punctuate the strength of Vienna as the center of its empire. Guarding the palace, so to speak, is a statue of Archduke Karl, who helped defeat Napoleon in 1809. An Austrian flag now flies above this historical symbol of the empire, with an inscription dedicated to Franz Josef, the penultimate emperor of Austria-Hungary. He presided during what is undoubtedly the most tumultuous period of the empire, beginning with internal struggles when it was still the Austrian Empire, the transformation into the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and its final decay during the fiasco of World War I, during which Franz Josef died at the tender age of 86. One can find memorials and monuments to Franz Josef throughout Vienna, and of course to other emperors as well. Here above the Hofburg's Schweizertor, or Swiss Gate, is a commemoration to Ferdinand I, who ruled the Habsburg Empire in the 1500s, at a time when the empire extended into both Bohemia, part of modern Czechia, and Hungary, including modern Slovakia. It translates as Ferdinand, King of the Romans, Germans, Hungary, Bohemia, etc., Prince of Spain, Archduke of Austria, Duke of Burgundy, etc., in 1552. Around this time, the Habsburg Empire was at its zenith. As we continue to work our way through the city, what did I say about turning corners? This is the magnificent Cathedral of St. Stephen. Incredible. Gothic in its highest form. Intricate in every minute detail, each piece building on the previous. Beautiful and sometimes a little bit scary. Here's the view from the surrounding rooftop level. The city center bows down to highlight this cathedral, including its intricate roof tiling, mosaic patterns, as well as symbols of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the city of Vienna, and the Republic of Austria. Here's a glance at its ornate interior. As with so many cities in Europe, there's a plague column, and this one is one of the more magnificently ornate I've ever seen, commemorating the recovery from a great plague that ended in 1679. Trust me, these guys are enjoying the show, but maybe we need a change of pace. You see, not every engaging sight in Vienna must be so opulent. We can enjoy such subtleties as these also. And this is why hot dogs are called wieners or Wieners, because they originated in Wien, the German name for Vienna. Vienna is often considered among the great cities on the Danube River, but the heart of the city isn't on the banks of the river's primary course. Within the old city proper are the Danube Canal, or Donaukanal, transformed from a natural arm of the river into an engineered waterway starting in 1598, and the equally transformed Wien River, which looks rather pathetic. Technically within city limits, though outside of the bustle of its heart, are the main course of the Danube River, or Donau, as it's called in German. The Neue Donau, or New Danube, created as a flood control project in the 1970s and 80s, and running parallel to the main river for about 20 kilometers. And the Alte Donau, or Old Danube, technically now a lake cut off from the river proper, although until the 1870s, a main part of the river that often changed course, and historically was spread across many smaller courses in what was once a great floodplain. From a practical standpoint, some level of control over the river aids in matters like reducing flood risk and being able to build bridges over the river that don't get wiped away every few years. But it's simply a shame that the beautiful ancient city is not reflected in the waters of this great river. Thankfully, the old town does have its share of fountains and other waterworks in minor compensation. Vienna reveals an endless complement of statuary. On top of buildings, next to buildings, the whole buildings themselves. They represent real human figures as well as allegorical figures. Presaging the selfie, perhaps. Domes, columns, and churches. The Riesenrad is the oldest existing Ferris wheel on Earth, and holding the title of tallest for 65 years until 1985. It now stands somewhere around 60th on the list of skyscraping spinners. Who knew there had been such a renaissance of George Ferris's concept, first realized in 1893? Vienna indeed has enough sights to make your head spin. But now we will step away from Austria and move to our next port of call on this tour, Prague, Czechia, or Praha Česko, as the locals call it. Let's start with a glide above the city of 100 spires. Now, don't be afraid. Check it out. Come on, you can do it. Yes. Here it is, the wondrous Church of Our Lady in the foreground, with Prague Castle on the distant hillside. The old town square with its share of statuary and surrounding distinctive architecture. If one church in the town square isn't enough, across from Our Lady is St. Nicholas with its ornate interior. And why have one pipe organ when you can have two? Beyond the old town square are endless spires, towers, and steeply pitched roofs, including that of the Powder Tower, once used to hold gunpowder stores as part of the old city wall defenses. Today you can go to the top of it and get a great view of the city, but isn't it even nicer from up here? Circling back around, we see the main square coming into full view with the Jan Hus statue and the Marian column. We see two churches, Baroque Church of St. Nicholas, Gothic Church of Our Lady, and in the left corner of the picture is the 14th century Old Town Hall, whose south exterior wall also contains the Prague astronomical clock, a restored and beautiful attraction of Prague, where every hour at the top of the hour, crowds gather to await the striking of the bells and the appearance of the 12 apostles in pairs, peeking through the sliding windows. Though the clock's origins are traced back to the early 1400s, the figures were added in the 1600s. The clock was badly damaged during World War II and was subsequently completely restored to its state as a marvel of medieval mechanical ingenuity. Below the apostles is the astronomical dial, a whole series of intricate devices in one, a background representing the earth and the sky, a zodiacal ring inside the large circle showing the time of day on the old scale used by the Czechs, the position of the sun and moon, etc. The lower disc represents a calendar, with the names of saints and holidays on its outer ring. The larger images represent each month, while the smaller represent the signs of the zodiac. The apostles finish their sequence as bright chimes ring before the time of day is struck on the booming main bell at the top of the tower. What a fun town this is. One of the things that makes it fun is the beer culture, which is as ever-present as the wonderful architecture. Prague stands on its own as a world capital, continuously populated going back to the time of the Celts. The expansion of the Habsburg Empire reached Prague and the whole of Bohemia in the 1500s. But the Praguers can be a stubborn lot, and there was a constant undertone of struggle between Vienna and Prague, as the Habsburg rule was continuously challenged over the years. I even get a little flavor of Amsterdam in this spot, but without the ubiquitous canal. Backtracking to Mary's column that I mentioned in the Old Town Square, this one has a line in front of it which marks the meridian at which Prague time was once measured. Another sign of a proud and independent-minded people. This guy's busy taking notes. I'm a sucker for a sundial. Beyond the main square's attractions, we go to the top of the nearby hill that contains Prague Castle, still an active seat of government. Feast your eyes on the magnificent St. Vitus Cathedral inside the castle walls and the Vltava River down below. There's always an armed guard standing out front, and more so when the crowds show up. St. Vitus has been in active service since 1344, and the castle has been built up around it. And there are plenty of other interesting sites within the castle and in the surrounding area, plus some interesting faces. Next up is the Charles Bridge, or Karlov Most, named after Charles IV, Holy Roman Emperor and King of Bohemia. There has been a bridge in this location since the 1150s, and the current bridge replaced it in 1362. The mostly Christian-themed statuary that lines both sides of the bridge was added in the late 1600s and early 1700s. Today, Charles Bridge is pedestrian only, allowing people time to take in the intricate decoration from different perspectives. This location served as the only bridge crossing of the Vltava River in Prague until 1841. Nowadays, there are 18 bridge crossings within the city limits, serving pedestrians, automobile traffic, and trains. Once, Charles Bridge was the key in securing Prague's old city from the invading Swedish army at the end of the 30 Years' War. The Swedes tried to cross the river at Charles Bridge from the west side's Mala Strana district, but were repelled. This is commemorated in a dedication on the east side's gate tower, near a statue dedicated to the bridge's namesake. Stop here a little while, traveler, but free and willing, where, having devastated many, at last, though unwilling, the fury of the Goths and Vandals had to stop, and read, sculpted in marble, what for everlasting remembrance of all the Bohemians, but above all the Vetero-Praguers, the Swedish war marked out in this tower, with iron and fire, in the year of our Lord 1648. This tower was the end and the turning point of the Gothic fury, but this is not the end of faith, the turning point of Bohemia. The Vetero-Praguer citizens would have wanted to inscribe the very same thing with their shed blood, had not the golden peace brought back to the Germanic world by the piety and justice of Ferdinand III supplied gold in place of blood. Pretty compelling stuff. Turning tail, just as the Swedes were forced to do nearly 400 years before, let's proceed through the bridge tower on the west side of the river into the Mala Strana district, literally meaning lesser town, but no less appealing, specifically making our way back up the hill not too far from Prague Castle. We find statues of astronomers Tycho Brahe and Johannes Kepler, both transplants to Prague. I guess they know a thing or two because they're standing near this hilltop brewery monastery. There are plenty of provisions, and on a lovely sunny day one can roam the grounds of the monastery and enjoy a beer and a goulash. All this sightseeing does make a tourist thirsty, so on our way back down the hill it pays to stop for some refreshments at the oldest bar in Prague. Inside are some interesting wall drawings and some good beer as well. The sacrifices I make to bring you this video. Taking a cruise in a small boat on the Vltava River gives you a perspective worth seeing. Passing along the Charles Bridge, the river flows gently, being controlled upstream, allowing boats to meander pleasantly. These barricades are in the way as ice deflectors, and I suppose they would prevent any out-of-control craft from smashing into the bridge proper. Coming underneath one of the ancient archways, Prague Castle rises out of the hilltop, and the buildings come right down to the waterfront. This duck also enjoys a nonchalant cruise of the Vltava. Adventurous souls can enter the Devil's Channel. We follow the boat in front of us through this narrow channel, a man-made waterway, once the home of many water-powered mills. Today it serves as a peaceful side channel under the shade of trees and alongside the buildings that come right to the waterfront. We also make our way under the Charles Bridge and come to a water wheel turning just for the pleasure of the tourist industry. Let's make one more trip across Charles Bridge, heading back toward the old town. Doing our best to ensure the survival of one more local brewery, we also partake in some hearty and satisfying food. Check out this map of all the breweries of Prague during the 19th century. There aren't nearly as many today, but there are enough to help maintain Czechia's status as the beer consumption leader of the world. Now let's say goodbye to Prague and move on to Bratislava, Slovakia. Starting with St. Martin's Cathedral, famous as a coronation church from 1563 to 1830, where 18 Hungarian kings, queens, and consorts were crowned. Most earlier coronations in the Kingdom of Hungary had occurred in the basilica in Székesfehérvár, but the location was shifted either because no one could pronounce the name of that city, or perhaps because the Ottomans swept through it and a considerable portion of Hungary, holding on to control for 150 years or so. Ultimately, Bratislava was overshadowed by Budapest, or Budapest as it is said in Hungarian, after the Ottomans were cleared out, and most particularly after the Ausgleich that created the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Furthermore, Bratislava was treated as a bit of an ugly stepchild by both Vienna during Austrian rule, as the more magnificent city only 50 miles distant, and Prague during the existence of Czechoslovakia, from that country's post-World War I formation through to the peaceful split into Czechia and Slovakia in 1993. Only a small portion of the original city wall remains. Where the highway runs today was the protective moat surrounding the old part of the city. Later it was filled in and became an extension of the Jewish quarter. But in the 1970s, the communist government decided to get rid of that section and replace it with the highway, running right in front of St. Martin's Cathedral. This puts the cathedral in the awkward position directly facing one of the busiest roads in the city. One must admit that it was a practical place to put the highway, but the decision was certainly made by the communist leadership with some contempt for the church as a building and an institution, and for the Jewish community displaced by the construction. And what's on top of St. Martin's Tower? A rendition of the crown of St. Stephen, as the Holy Crown of Hungary is known, sitting safely on a cute little pillow. On the hillside above St. Martin's is Bratislava Castle. Although some government ambassadorial business is sometimes conducted here, it mostly attracts tourists nowadays. It dominates the landscape on its hilltop location overlooking the Danube River below. Here we get a view on a cloudy morning as we circle what has been said to be reminiscent of an upside-down table with its square shape and 4 corner towers. From a practical standpoint, the towers are not equal size, shape, or height, so I'm not sure how good a table it would make if turned upside down. In any case, it does offer a great view. After standing for decades in ruins, the castle exterior and gardens have been restored to the splendor of the days of Maria Theresa. The garden and surroundings exhibit the customary statuary, and from the edge of the castle grounds one can view St. Martin's and the old town beyond. This map in bronze near the riverfront indicates what the town looked like in the days of Maria Theresa, with the moat surrounding it. Another part of the moat, instead of being converted to highway, has become Viestoslav Square. Here's the namesake poet himself, surrounded by some charming fountains, while the Slovak National Theatre anchors the opposite end of the square. In addition, Bratislava has a few other interesting squares, and quiet morning walks are easy to come by. This plaque attributes a performance here by Mozart during a visit when he was but 6 years old, although this event meets with some controversy. Even the Bratislava tourism website qualifies that he is believed to have performed a concert on Venturska Street in 1762. We saw the old city wall remnant near St. Martin's, and in another corner of the old town rises Michael's Tower, the city's only preserved gate from medieval times, built around 1300. From its balcony 6 stories up, a panoramic view across the whole city is offered. On the hill known as Slavin, the Soviets built a cemetery in commemoration of the Red Army's relief of the city from German forces at the end of World War II, which those fallen respectfully deserve. The Slovak Parliament Building and Freedom Square both host fountains, and there's a unique blue church in the city. Of course, Bratislava is full of the customary statuary, great columns and great buildings, all of which add up to a lively architectural scene. The 3 historical languages of this city are shown on this pharmacy. German, stemming from the Austrian influence, Hungarian, due of course to the fact that Bratislava and all of Slovakia were long part of the Kingdom of Hungary, and of course, Slovak. Flying past the old city wall and St. Martin's, the newer part of the city, with its high-rises, contrasts with the mellow and traditional old town, with its squares and statuary abound. West of the city proper is Devin Castle, standing along the Danube River at its junction with the Morava River. It is in ruin thanks to Napoleon and his bunch destroying it when they evacuated the area in the early 1800s. This is a great place to put a fortification, right where the waters of two strategic rivers run together. There's a commanding view from the top of the castle, built on top of a well-placed massive cliff. Once this was the very corner of the Kingdom of Hungary. It also stood at the border separating communist Czechoslovakia from free and neutral Austria. These waters were once the Iron Curtain. The diminutive Maiden Tower served as a watchtower very near the confluence of the rivers. And as we rise above Devon Castle, we end our tour of Bratislava, Prague, and Vienna. Our journey will continue as we strike out next time toward the heart of Slovakia. We'll make our way from the west to the east, crossing the whole of Slovakia in the process. There's plenty more to come in this series. Thank you for joining me today on the first leg of our journey. Please give me a rating and a comment. Please like and subscribe. See you next time.